The massive war chamber fell silent as Warlord Krexthar slammed his forearms against the obsidian table, his crimson eyes blazing with fury. The holographic display showed the same impossible result for the third time. Another hegemony stronghold had fallen not to armies or fleets, but to something far more insidious. "Explain this to me again, Admiral." Krexthar's voice rumbled like distant thunder across the chamber filled with his most trusted commanders. "How does a single human, one, bring down a fortress that has stood for 3 millennia, Admiral?" Vexhar's tentacles writhed nervously as she manipulated the tactical display. "My lord, the human arrived on Kepler 442b claiming to be a cultural exchange student. Our intelligence indicated no military background, no combat augmentations, no weapons beyond primitive projectile firearms for sport. And yet," Krexthar's mandibles clicked ominously, "Fort Dominance now flies the banner of rebellion. 20,000 of our finest warriors defeated by academia?" The human in question sat calmly in the center of the chamber, surrounded by energy restraints but appearing remarkably relaxed for someone facing interrogation by the galaxy's most feared warlord. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her glasses, an archaic affectation that no other species understood, and smiled that peculiar human expression that had been unnerving alien species for the past 2 centuries. "You want to know my secret?" Sarah asked, her voice carrying easily across the chamber despite its modest volume. "It's really quite simple." Krexthar leaned forward, his massive frame casting shadows across the prisoner. "Speak, human. Where is your army? Where are your weapons? How do you turn our own soldiers against us?" Sarah's smile widened. "I don't turn them against you, Warlord. I show them what they're fighting for isn't worth dying for." "Impossible," snarled Commander Zeftok, his scales rippling with agitation. "Our soldiers are indoctrinated from hatching. They know only loyalty to the hegemony." "Do they?" Sarah tilted her head slightly, a gesture that somehow conveyed both innocence and profound knowledge. "Tell me, Commander, when was the last time any of your soldiers chose their profession? When did they last see their families? When did they last create something instead of destroying it?" The silence stretched uncomfortably long. "I spent 6 months on Kepler 442b, Sarah continued, addressing the entire assembly. "Not as a conqueror, but as a teacher. I showed your soldiers something you've kept from them for generations: choice." Warlord Krexthar's laugh boomed through the chamber, but it held an edge of uncertainty. "Choice? You think choice is a weapon?" "The most powerful weapon in the universe," Sarah replied without hesitation. "I taught them to read, not military codes or tactical manuals, but stories, poetry, philosophy. I showed them art, not propaganda, but expression, music that wasn't martial hymns." Admiral Vexhar's tentacles stilled completely. "You corrupted them with entertainment?" "I gave them culture," Sarah corrected gently. "I showed them what life could be when it's lived instead of merely survived. When your Corporal Thane saw his first sunset painting, he wept. When Private Melissa, yes, she chose that name herself after learning about human naming traditions, heard her first lullaby, she asked why no one had ever sung to her." The war chamber's atmosphere grew heavier with each word. These were concepts that struck at the very foundation of the hegemony's power structure. "You see?" Sarah continued. "You asked where my army is. My army isn't made of soldiers, it's made of ideas. And ideas, Warlord Krexthar, are the one thing your empire can't armor against, can't shoot down, and can't conquer." Commander Zeftok's voice cracked slightly. "Ideas don't win wars, don't they?" Sarah's eyes sparkled with something between mischief and compassion. "Right now, on 17 different worlds, your soldiers are laying down their weapons. Not in defeat, but in hope. They're choosing to build instead of destroy. They're choosing to create families instead of ending them. They're choosing to ask questions instead of blindly following orders." Warlord Krexthar stood to his full, imposing height, his forearms spread wide. "We could execute you right now, end this rebellion." "You could," Sarah agreed, completely unfazed. "But it wouldn't matter anymore. The idea has already spread. Every soldier who's learned there's more to existence than warfare, every citizen who's discovered they have the right to dream, They're all part of my army now. And the most beautiful part? Sarah's smile became radiant. You can't fight an army that doesn't want to fight back. You can't defeat people who respond to violence with understanding, to hatred with compassion, to oppression with the simple, radical act of choosing love. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in his centuries of conquest, Warlord Krexthar faced an enemy he couldn't comprehend, couldn't intimidate, and couldn't destroy. This is impossible, he whispered, his voice losing its commanding thunder. No, Sarah replied, softly. This is human. We don't need armies when we have something worth believing in. We don't need weapons when we have hope. And we don't need to conquer when we can convince. As if summoned by her words, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Admiral Vexhar's tentacles flew across her control panel, her face pale with shock. My lord, she stammered. The crew. They're requesting permission to stand down. Sarah Chen, cultural anthropologist and unwitting revolutionary, simply smiled as the mightiest war machine in the galaxy began choosing peace, one heart at a time. That, she said quietly, is my army.